She signed the divorce papers smiling. Then her lawyer handed him the deed to everything she owned. The pen in Simone's hand was a Mont Blanc Meisterstück, solid gold, with a diamond chip on the clip. It cost $42,000. She made sure everyone in the room knew it. She mentioned it twice. Now, she used it to sign her name, a flourish of elegant, vicious loops that ended in a sharp, definitive jab at the paper. She slid the divorce settlement across the polished mahogany table of the lawyer's conference room. Her smile was as bright and hard as the VVS diamonds on her wrist. "There," she said, her voice dripping with the sweet poison of victory. "It's done." Tobenna, her husband of 15 years, now her ex-husband, did not look at her. He simply stared at the document that stripped him of half of a shared fortune, a fortune he had built from red dust and whispered prayers. He nodded once. His lawyer, a stern-faced man named Mr. Adebayo, gave him a concerned glance. Simone laughed, a sound like ice cubes clinking in an empty glass. "What's the matter, darling? Cat got your tongue?" "Oh, that's right. It always has." Tobenna remained silent. Simone stood, smoothing the front of her Balmain dress, a severe white garment that made her look like a beautiful, expensive weapon. She picked up her Hermes Birkin bag from the chair beside her. The bag was Himalayan crocodile. It was worth more than the average American house. "Well, I believe that concludes our business," she said to the room at large. "I'll expect the wire transfer to be initiated within 24 hours, as stipulated." Mr. Adebayo cleared his throat. "There is one more item, Ms. Adekunle." Simone paused, her hand on the doorknob. She arched a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Really? I can't imagine what. I believe I got everything I wanted." Mr. Adebayo reached into his leather briefcase and pulled out a second envelope, a simple, plain manila folder that looked almost vulgar next to the opulent room. It was sealed with a plain red wax stamp. "This," the lawyer said, his voice level and deep, "your husband asked me to present this to you only after you had signed the dissolution agreement, unconditionally." Simone's perfect smile faltered for a fraction of a second. She glanced at Tobenna, who finally lifted his head. His eyes were not angry. They were not sad. They were just still, like the surface of a deep, dark lake. "What is it?" she asked, a sliver of irritation in her tone. "Some last pathetic attempt at a love letter?" "No," Mr. Adebayo said, breaking the seal with a dry crack that echoed in the silent room. He slid a single thick document from within. "It's the deed." Simone's face froze. "The deed to what? The beach house?" "I already got that." The lawyer looked down at the paper, then up at her, his gaze unwavering. "No, Ms. Adekunle, it is the master deed. The deed that underpins the trust that holds all the assets you just divided. The one you co-signed 15 years ago when you thought it was just a formality for his little side projects." He paused, letting the weight of the words settle. "The deed to everything." The smile on Simone's face didn't fall. It shattered. "If you believe that kindness has a power that money can never buy and that a person's true worth is measured in grace, not gold, then subscribe to our channel. You are in the right place. Now let me take you back to where it all began." Tobenna Okafor was born not with the silver spoon in his mouth, but with the red earth of Onitsha under his fingernails. He was the fourth son of a market woman who sold yams and a father who taught him how to listen more than he spoke. His father used to say, "A wise man has 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, my son. The man who speaks all the time learns nothing. The man who listens learns the world." Tobenna took the lesson to heart. He became a boy of profound silence, a silence that was often mistaken for slowness. It was not slowness, it was observation. While other boys were shouting in the market, Tobenna was watching. He watched how the truck drivers who brought goods from Lagos always complained about the cost of lodging. He watched how the merchants from Kano needed secure places to store their textiles. He saw not just the chaos of the market, but the ecosystem beneath it, the needs, the gaps, the opportunities. He started small. With the money he saved from helping his mother, he and his older brother built a single, clean room with the secure lock behind their family compound. They rented it out to a traveling merchant. The merchant told his friends. Soon they had 4 rooms, then 10. Tobenna didn't celebrate. He listened. He heard the merchants worry about where to park their lorries. So he bought a small, unused plot of land next to the main road and turned it into a secure lorry park. This was the pattern of his life. Listen, identify a need, quietly build the solution. When he was 25, he left Nigeria for America, for Atlanta, with a few $1,000s and a mind that saw blueprints and empty lots. He didn't speak of his ambitions. He didn't have to. He worked. He started by buying a single dilapidated duplex in College Park. He fixed it himself, his hands, already calloused from Nigerian earth, learning the new languages of drywall and copper piping. He rented it to a family who had been denied elsewhere. He listened to their stories. He learned they needed childcare, so his next property was a 4-plex near a school. Over 30 years, his silence built an empire. It wasn't loud. It wasn't flashy. It was an empire of brick and mortar, of logistics warehouses near the airport, of quiet apartment complexes in Decatur, of commercial properties in Midtown that housed businesses that made all the noise. By the time he was 51, Tobenna Okafor had a net worth of $2.8 billion, and almost no one knew his name. He still wore simple, dark-colored polo shirts and comfortable trousers. He drove a 10-year-old Lexus. He found no joy in things, only in the quiet satisfaction of building things that worked, things that served a need. He met Simone at a charity gala he had been pressured to attend by his accountant. She was a vision. She worked as an art consultant for the city's elite, a job that required her to be charming, beautiful, and fluent in the language of status. She was everything he was not. Effervescent, loud, dazzling. When she spoke to him, she didn't seem to mind his silence. In fact, she seemed to find it intriguing. "You're a man of mystery, Mr. Okafor," she said, her smile radiant. He thought she saw the man behind the silence. He was wrong. She saw the silence and assumed it was a vault, and she was determined to get the combination. They married within a year. In the beginning, it was good. He loved her energy, the way she filled their beautiful Buckhead mansion with laughter and light. She loved his stability, his calm, and of course, the limitless American Express card. He built her a gallery. He funded her projects. He asked for nothing in return but her companionship. But over 15 years, the light in her had changed. It went from being a warm glow to a cold, hard glint. She began to see his silence not as strength, but as a weakness to be managed. His simple clothes became an embarrassment. His preference for quiet evenings at home over her glittering social scene became a point of contention. "You have to perform, Tobenna," she would hiss before they entered a party. "People need to know who we are." He knew who he was. The problem was she had forgotten. She had fallen in love not with the man, but with the lifestyle he provided. The man himself was just a quiet, inconvenient accessory. The final argument had been quiet, like all their arguments. It was over a trust document. 15 years ago, at the start of their marriage, he had asked her to sign a document establishing a master trust. He'd explained it simply. "This puts everything I build into a protected entity. It is the foundation. We build the house on top of it. This keeps it safe." She had signed it without reading it, laughing it off as Toby's boring paperwork. Now, he had created a new, smaller trust for a philanthropic project, a series of trade schools in Nigeria. He wanted to fund it with $50 million. Simone was furious. "50 million, she'd shrieked, the sound echoing in their marble-floored foyer. "To some dusty village in the middle of nowhere? That's a new jet, Tobenna. That's the penthouse in Miami we looked at." "It is for home," he said softly. "This is our home," she retorted, gesturing wildly at the opulent surroundings. "This world I have built for us, and you want to just give our money away?" "It is my money," he said, the words quiet but firm. It was the first time he had ever drawn that line. Her face contorted into something ugly. "Is it? After 15 years of being your social ambassador, of making your name mean something in this city, of turning your boring, quiet money into actual status?" "I don't think so," She took a step closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. You were always just a quiet little piggy bank, Tobenna, a silent ATM. And I have earned my withdrawals. That was the moment he knew it was over, not because of the anger, but because of the transaction. She saw their entire life, their entire marriage, as a service she had rendered, and for which she was now owed payment. There was no love left. There was only accounting. The divorce proceedings were swift and brutal. Simone's lawyers were sharks. They painted him as a cold, emotionally distant husband. They used his silence against him, framing it as neglect. He did not fight back. He instructed Mr. Adebayo to give her what she wanted. Sir, this is half of everything, his lawyer had pleaded. The houses, the stock portfolio, the art collection. She is gutting you. A house divided against itself cannot stand, Tobenna had replied, quoting a scripture his mother loved. Let her take the bricks. They are just things. And so he signed. He watched her sign, her triumphant smile, a knife in his gut. He walked out of the towering glass skyscraper in Midtown, leaving behind his lawyer to finalize the details. He didn't get into his car. He just walked. He walked for miles, the city's noise a dull roar in his ears. He walked until the skyscrapers of Buckhead gave way to the low-slung buildings of the city's south side. He found himself on a street corner in a neighborhood that reminded him of the bustling, chaotic energy of Onitsha. Cars honked. Music spilled from open doorways. The air smelled of grilled meat and exhaust fumes. He felt a profound, hollow ache in his chest. He had built an empire of things, and in the end, he was left with nothing but himself, and he wasn't sure who that was anymore. He sank down onto the curb, the rough concrete, a stark contrast to the plush leather of his former life. He put his head in his hands, a man worth billions, sitting on a dirty curb like a vagrant, utterly alone. He sat there for a long time. People walked past, giving him wide berth. He was just another shadow in the urban landscape. Then a voice, thick with a Ghanaian accent, cut through his stupor. My son. He looked up. An old woman was standing over him. She was beautiful, her face a roadmap of a long and storied life. Her skin was the color of rich, dark earth after cleansing rain. Her hair was a crown of silver and white braids, coiled elegantly on her head. She wore a simple wrapper of vibrant kente cloth. She stood behind a small, steaming cart from which a heavenly aroma was rising. It was the smell of palm nuts, of spices, of home. My son, come, she said again, her voice gentle but firm. The ground is no place for a king to rest his head. Soup is hot. This was Mama Adwoa. She did not see a billionaire. She did not see a broken man. She saw a fellow soul who looked hungry. It was the first unconditional kindness Tobenna had felt in 15 years. He slowly, stiffly, got to his feet and walked towards her cart. Simone's victory tour began that very night. She threw a lavish party at the Buckhead mansion, her mansion now. She called it her Independence Day celebration. The guest list was a who's who of Atlanta's elite. Real estate moguls, tech entrepreneurs, city council members, and the professionally beautiful people who orbited them. The champagne was Dom Perignon, flowing from a towering fountain in the center of the grand ballroom. The food was catered by the city's most expensive chef. Simone herself was a vision in a floor-length, backless gown by Oscar de la Renta, the fabric shimmering like liquid gold under the crystal chandeliers. To new beginnings, she toasted, holding her glass high. Her voice, amplified by a discreet microphone, rang through the room. To shedding dead weight and embracing the future of unlimited potential. The crowd roared its approval. They were her friends, her allies, the social army she had cultivated for years. They surrounded her, offering congratulations, their eyes gleaming with a mixture of admiration and envy. You look radiant, Simone, one woman gushed, her own jewels paling in comparison. Freedom agrees with you. I've never seen you happier, a man in a tailored Tom Ford suit added, kissing her on both cheeks. Simone basked in the attention. She moved through the party, a queen in her court, dropping little poison-laced anecdotes about her marriage. 15 years, she'd say with a theatrical sigh, placing a hand over her heart. You can't imagine the silence. It was like living with the ghost. A very, very wealthy ghost, thank God, but a ghost nonetheless. The crowd would chuckle knowingly. He had no passion, no fire, she continued, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. He'd rather look at blueprints than go to the opera. I tried, believe me. I tried to drag him into the world. But some people are just empty inside. Each word was a carefully crafted performance designed to paint her as the vibrant victim and him as the soulless, boring architect of her misery. She was erasing him, rewriting their shared history into a narrative where she was the hero who had finally escaped her gilded cage. 2 days later, she was photographed by a society blogger while shopping at Phipps Plaza. She was leaving the Gucci store, followed by a security guard whose arms were laden with bags. Her outfit was meticulously casual, a pair of $1,200 distressed jeans, a $900 Balenciaga t-shirt, and a pair of sunglasses that cost more than a month's rent for most people. The caption on the blog read, "Fresh start. Simone Adekunle celebrates her new chapter with some well-deserved retail therapy. You glow, girl." Meanwhile, Tobenna sat on a plastic stool by the side of a busy road, a bowl of palm nut soup cradled in his hands. Mama Adwoa's restaurant was nothing more than a cart, a few mismatched stools, and a large, brightly colored umbrella to ward off the sun. But the soup was the best thing he had ever tasted. It was rich and fragrant, the scent of slow stewed palm fruit, smoked turkey, and delicate spices filling his senses. The banku, a smooth, slightly sour dough of fermented corn and cassava, was the perfect vessel to scoop up the thick orange-hued broth. It tasted of patience. It tasted of care. He ate in silence. Mama Adwoa worked in silence. She served the construction workers on their lunch break, the taxi drivers between fares, the neighborhood aunties on their way to the market. She treated each of them with the same warm, efficient grace. She called every man my son and every woman my daughter. Tobenna came back the next day and the next. It became his ritual. He would leave his empty, silent penthouse in Midtown and drive to her corner. He would sit on his stool, eat his soup, and watch the world go by. He didn't speak much. He didn't need to. Mama Adwoa never pressed him. She seemed to understand that his silence was not emptiness, but a container for a pain too heavy for words. Sometimes she would talk, her voice a soothing balm. She told him about her home in Cape Coast, Ghana, about her children, now grown and scattered across the globe, about the day she decided to start selling soup in Atlanta because she missed the taste of home and figured others did too. "Food is not just for the belly, my son," she said one afternoon, wiping down her counter with a clean cloth. "It is for the soul. When you cook with love, the people who eat, they taste that love, it makes them strong." Tobenna just nodded, but the words settled deep inside him. Simone's world was built on performance and transactions. Mama Adwoa's world was built on love and nourishment. The final, most public humiliation came a week later. Simone was being honored at a luncheon for a local arts foundation, an organization she now chaired after a generous 7-figure donation made from her divorce settlement. The event was held at the Grand Hyatt in Buckhead. Tobenna had been invited months ago before the divorce was finalized. He'd forgotten about it, but a reminder popped up on his phone. For reasons he didn't fully understand, he decided to go. He wore his usual attire, a simple navy polo shirt, gray trousers, and comfortable shoes. He slipped into the back of the ballroom just as Simone was taking the stage to accept her award. She looked magnificent in an emerald green Chanel suit, her hair swept up in an elegant chignon. She began her speech, thanking the board, thanking the donors. Then her eyes scanned the room and landed on him. A flicker of surprise crossed her face, quickly replaced by a cruel, triumphant smile. She departed from her prepared remarks. "You know," she said, her voice smooth as silk, "this award is about vision. It's about seeing the beauty and potential in the world and having the passion to bring it to life. For years, I felt stifled. I was married to a man who, bless his heart, saw the world in shades of gray, a man of profound silence. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. People turned in their seats, following her gaze to the back of the room where Tobenna stood. He felt hundreds of pairs of eyes on him, pitying, judging. He is a good man in his own quiet way, Simone continued, her voice dripping with condescension. But his passions were for concrete and balanced sheets. He could never understand the fire that drove me, the need for art, for beauty, for life. It is only now, standing on my own, that I can finally give my vision the resources it deserves. She held up the crystal of words. And this is just the beginning. Then came the final, cutting blow. Some people are builders, she concluded, looking directly at Tobenna. They laid the foundation, but it takes someone with spirit, someone with a soul, to build the beautiful house on top. I am grateful for the foundation, but the house is all mine. The room erupted in applause. People were standing, cheering for the brave, beautiful woman who had escaped her dull, gray marriage to finally shine. Tobenna didn't move. He stood there, feeling the force of her public execution. She hadn't just divorced him. She had publicly declared him soulless, a mere foundation for her grand life. He turned and walked out of the ballroom, the sound of her ovation chasing him down the hall. He drove straight to Mama Adwoa's corner. He needed the anchor of her quiet kindness, the simple truth of her soup. The third week after the divorce was when the rains came, a relentless, week-long deluge that turned the Atlanta sky a bruised purple gray. Business on Mama Adwoa's corner slowed to a trickle. People stayed indoors. The construction workers found shelter. The usual stream of customers vanished, replaced by the lonely hiss of tires on wet asphalt. Still, every evening, Tobenna came. He would park his car, pull up the hood of his jacket, and make his way to the small oasis of warmth and light under her big umbrella. He would sit on the stool, the rain drumming a melancholy rhythm overhead, and she would serve him a steaming bowl of palm nut soup. On the third night of the downpour, a Tuesday, Tobenna arrived to find Mama Adwoa staring into her large soup pot with a worried look on her face. The pot was barely a quarter full. He was her only customer for the last 2 hours. "Mama," he said softly, "is everything all right?" She looked up and gave him a weary but warm smile. "Ah, my son, it is nothing. The rain keeps everyone away. But God is good. There is still enough for you." She ladled out a generous portion into his usual bowl, scraping the bottom of the pot to get all the rich, thick broth. She handed it to him with a piece of banku. As he ate, he watched her. She didn't make a bowl for herself. She began to quietly clean her station, pouring water from a jug to wash her utensils, her movements efficient and practiced. He realized with a jolt that he had just been served the last of her soup for the day. He had taken her dinner. He felt a pang of guilt. "Mama, you did not eat." She waved a dismissive hand. "I am fine. An old woman like me does not need much. Seeing you eat is enough for my spirit." He finished his meal in a heavy silence, the warmth of the soup fighting the cold guilt in his stomach. He paid her, adding a large tip, which she accepted with a grateful but not subservient nod. The next night, the rain was even heavier. The wind whipped the edges of her umbrella, and the street was deserted. When he arrived, she was sitting on one of the stools, her arms crossed, looking out at the sheets of rain. The big soup pot was on its stand, but the flame beneath it was not lit. "No business today, Mama?" he asked, his heart sinking. "Not a soul," she said with a sigh. She saw the disappointment on his face. "But wait, I saved something for you. I knew you would come." She went to a cooler she kept behind the cart. From it, she pulled a smaller container. It was her own portion, the meal she had set aside for her dinner. Without a moment's hesitation, she heated it up on her small gas burner and poured it into a bowl for him. It was a smaller portion than usual, but it was all she had. This was no longer just business. This was a gift. She was feeding him from her own plate, ensuring he was nourished when she had no other customers, no other income for the day. He tried to protest. "Mama, no, this is yours. I cannot take it." She pressed the bowl into his hands, her grip surprisingly strong. Her eyes were serious. "In my village," she said, her voice low and steady, "when a guest comes to your house, you feed them. It does not matter If it is your last piece of yam, you give it, because a guest is a blessing from God. You, my son, you are my guest. Now eat before it gets cold. He ate the soup, and it felt like the most sacred meal of his life. Each spoonful was an act of pure, uncalculated grace. She expected nothing in return. She didn't know he was a billionaire who could buy her 100 restaurants. She only knew he was a sad, quiet man who showed up every night, rain or shine. And so she fed him. The third night, Thursday, was the worst yet. The storm had intensified, the streets were starting to flood. He almost didn't go, thinking she surely would have stayed home, but something pulled him there. He found her packing up her cart, preparing to leave early. Mama, he called out, running through the rain. She turned, a look of relief on her face. My son, I was worried. I was about to go. I'm sorry I'm late, he said, shaking the water from his jacket. No, it is I who is leaving. No one is out in this weather. She paused, then gave him a sad smile. I am sorry. I did not cook today. I had only a little money for ingredients, and I did not want them to spoil if no one came. He felt a profound sadness. He had come to rely on this small ritual, this bowl of warmth in his cold, empty life. He nodded, understanding. Of course, you should go home and be safe. He turned to leave. Wait, she called out. He turned back. She was rummaging in a small bag, her personal bag where she kept her purse and keys. She pulled out a small foil-wrapped package and a plastic bag containing a single, perfect round of banku. This, she said, pressing it into his hands. This is my own food. I cooked it at home this morning for my dinner tonight. Please, you take it. A man must not go hungry. Tobenna stared at the package in his hands. It was still warm. This was not the last of her inventory. This was her food, the meal she had prepared for herself that she was now giving to a virtual stranger. He looked at her kind, wrinkled face, her eyes full of genuine concern for him, a man she knew only as my son. In that moment, something inside him that had been frozen for years began to thaw. Simone, with all her wealth and beauty, had called him an empty foundation. This woman, with nothing but a soup cart and a good heart, had treated him like a king. He couldn't speak. A lump formed in his throat. He just looked at her, his eyes conveying the gratitude that his voice could not. He finally understood what his mother had always told him. The richest person is not the one who has the most, but the one who gives the most when they have the least. He knew then what he had to do. He had let Simone take the houses, the cars, the art. He had let her believe she had won, but she had forgotten about the foundation, and he was about to remind her. The next morning, he called Mr. Adebayo. It's time, he said. Call the meeting, which brought them back to the conference room, to the polished mahogany table and the shattering of Simone's smile. The lawyer's words hung in the air, heavy and lethal. The deed to everything. Simone stared at the document on the table as if it were a snake. Her face, a carefully constructed mask of poise and victory, was crumbling in real time. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving her expensive foundation looking like a layer of pale dust. What are you talking about? She stammered. Her voice, a thin, reedy thing he'd never heard before. That's impossible. Our assets were split 50-50. My lawyers verified everything. Mr. Adebayo adjusted his glasses. He spoke with the calm, methodical precision of a surgeon. They verified the assets in the portfolio, Ms. Adekunle. They did not, it seems, investigate the nature of the entity that held the portfolio. 15 years ago, you and Mr. Okafor established the Okafor Heritage Trust. He was the sole capital contributor. You were added as a spousal beneficiary. He slid the document across the table to her. This is the master deed for that trust. If you look at Article 4, Section B, you will see the inception clause. It states that all assets acquired by the trust are held under the primary ownership of the original capital contributor. You signed it. Your signature is right there next to his. Simone's trembling hand reached for the paper. Her eyes scanned the clause, her perfectly applied mascara starting to look like war paint on a soldier who had just lost the war. So I cheated, but the divorce settlement, she whispered. It supersedes this. On the contrary, Mr. Adebayo said, the settlement pertains to the distribution of marital assets, but it was predicated on the assumption of joint ownership. This deed establishes primary ownership. And more importantly, there is the dissolution proviso in Article 9. He didn't need to point it out. Her eyes had already found it. Her breath hitched. The dissolution proviso, the lawyer continued, his voice a low, somber drumbeat, states that in the event of a marital dissolution, all spousal beneficiary rights are terminated, and full control and ownership of 100% of the trust assets revert to the original capital contributor. That would be Mr. Okafor. Silence. A deep, profound silence filled the room. It was Tobenna's native language, and in it, he was king. Simone looked from the paper to Tobenna, her eyes wide with disbelief and dawning horror. She was seeing him for the first time, not as her quiet, passive husband, not as a piggy bank, but as the silent, patient architect of the entire world she had just lost. You planned this, she breathed, the words laced with venomous accusation. Tobenna finally spoke. His voice was not loud. It was not angry. It was as calm and deep as the lake he had been described as. No, he said simply, I did not plan for our marriage to fail. That clause was not for you. It was to protect the work, the legacy. It was to ensure that what I built would continue to build, to serve its purpose. I had hoped we would build it together. He paused and his gaze was steady. You wanted the house. You never cared about the foundation. A house with no foundation, Simone, is just a pile of expensive rubble. Her face crumpled. The beautiful, confident queen of Atlanta society was gone. In her place was a desperate, terrified woman. So what does this mean? She asked, her voice cracking. The settlement, the money. The settlement you signed is now void, Mr. Adebayo stated flatly. As the assets you were awarded were never legally yours to be awarded, they have reverted to Mr. Okafor, the mansion in Buckhead, the beach house in Sea Island, the art collection, the stock portfolio, the cars, all of it. So I get nothing? She whispered, the word catching in her throat. You get the $42,000 pen you used to sign the papers, Tobenna said, his voice devoid of malice. It was just a statement of fact. And the clothes on your back, they were gifts. I never take back a gift. With that, Simone broke. A raw, guttural sob escaped her lips. The sound was shocking in its ugliness, a stark contrast to her cultivated perfection. The mask was not just shattered, it was dust. She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with violent, racking sobs. All the performance, all the arrogance, all the cruel victory dissolved into a puddle of raw, pathetic despair. Tobenna stood up. He walked around the table and paused beside her. He reached into his pocket and placed a simple, clean handkerchief on the table beside her shaking hands. He did not touch her. He looked at Mr. Adebayo and nodded. Then he walked out of the room, leaving Simone to drown in the ruins of the beautiful house she thought she owned. He didn't look back. The past was finally, truly behind him. The aftermath was swift and total. Simone Adekunle, the toast of Atlanta, vanished from the social scene overnight. The wire transfer never came. Instead, a courier delivered a notice of eviction to the Buckhead mansion. The locks were changed the next day. The Black American Express card was declined at Neiman Marcus. Her calls to her powerful friends went unanswered. News travels fast in that world, and no one wants to be associated with the spectacular fall from grace. She had lost her only real currency, her access to Tobenna's wealth. Without it, she was nobody. Tobenna, however, was not interested in her ruin. His focus was on building something new. The first thing he did was drive to Mama Adwoa's corner. It was a bright, sunny day, the storms having passed. She was there, serving a line of customers, her familiar smile a beacon of warmth. He waited until the lunch rush was over. He walked up to her cart. Mama Adwoa, he said, his voice full of a warmth she had not heard before. Ah, my son, you are here. You are looking lighter today. The sadness has left your eyes. It has, he said, and I am here to thank you. He tried to hand her a check. It was for a very large amount of money. She looked at it, then pushed his hand away gently. "No, my son," she said, shaking her head. "What I gave you was soup. It was not for this. I fed you because you were hungry. That is all." This was the moment Tobenna had anticipated. It was the test, and she had passed it perfectly. He had experienced the transactional nature of Simone's world. This was the pure, untainted grace of Mama Adwoa's. This was the rejection of the reward. He felt a wave of emotion so powerful it almost buckled his knees. He realized his money, which could buy skyscrapers, was worthless in the face of this woman's simple integrity. "I know," he said, his voice thick. "I know it wasn't for this, but you taught me something. You reminded me of what it means to build something real, not with steel and glass, but with love. So please let me help you build." He didn't offer her money again. He asked her a question. "Mama, if you could have any kitchen in the world, what would it look like?" Her eyes lit up. For the next hour, she described her dream. A big, clean kitchen with 6 burners. A walk-in refrigerator so the produce would always be fresh. A large counter where she could pound her fufu. A small, cozy dining room with simple wooden tables where people could sit and eat without worrying about the rain. 2 months later, on that very corner, Mama Adwoa's kitchen opened its doors. The dilapidated vacant building behind her spot on the curb had been bought and transformed. It was not a fancy upscale restaurant. It was exactly what she had described: clean, warm, and welcoming. The heart of the place was a gleaming, state-of-the-art kitchen that was bigger than the dining area. Tobenna funded the entire project, managing the construction with the same quiet efficiency he applied to all his work. He established a foundation in her name to own the restaurant, ensuring its future and making her the salaried president for life. He also funded a program that provided free meals to the homeless in the neighborhood every single night. The restaurant became a landmark. The food, now made in a dream kitchen, was even better. People came from all over the city, drawn by the stories and the incredible aroma of authentic Ghanaian cooking. 6 months after the opening, on a cool autumn evening, Tobenna was sitting at his usual table in the corner, a bowl of palm nut soup in front of him. The restaurant was full, buzzing with happy chatter. Mama Adwoa was moving between the kitchen and the dining room, her face beaming with joy, stopping to chat with customers, patting a child on the head, making sure everyone felt at home. The bell above the door jingled. A woman stood there, hesitating. She was thin, and her clothes, though clean, were worn. Her face was bare of makeup, and she looked older, humbled. It was Simone. She saw Tobenna, her eyes filled with the complex mixture of shame, fear, and something else, regret. She started to back away, but before she could leave, Mama Adwoa saw her. She walked to the door, her expression one of simple, open-hearted welcome. She did not know who this woman was or the history she shared with the quiet man in the corner. She only saw a woman who looked hungry and lost. She placed a gentle hand on Simone's arm. "My daughter," Mama Adwoa said, her voice the sound of pure grace. "Come, soup is hot." Tears welled in Simone's eyes. She nodded, unable to speak, and allowed herself to be led to a small table. A moment later, a steaming, fragrant bowl of palm nut soup was placed in front of her. It was a gift, given freely, with no expectation. It was the grace she had never shown, now being offered to her when she deserved it least. She picked up her spoon and began to eat. Tobenna watched from his corner. He felt no triumph, no anger, only a quiet sense of peace. The scales had been balanced, justice had been served, but it had been tempered with mercy. He looked across the room at Mama Adwoa as she stood by the kitchen pass, ladling another bowl of soup. She caught his eye and gave him a brilliant smile. He smiled back, a full, genuine smile that reached his eyes. He remembered the proverb she had told him one rainy night, a piece of wisdom from her grandmother in Ghana. She who dances at the grave digs her own. Simone had danced. She had celebrated the death of their marriage, and in doing so had engineered her own downfall. But Mama Adwoa had done the opposite. She had offered life in the form of a bowl of soup to a man who looked like he was at his own funeral. And in doing so, She had built a legacy. Every tale has a lesson, and this channel never forgets. The truest wealth is not what you keep in a bank, but what you give from your heart. The simplest act of kindness can be the foundation for the most beautiful house of all. Subscribe for more stories that feed the soul.